In the debates over the Massachusetts ballot questions, question 2 has been on the quieter side. But here are the basics. According to the Secretary of State's Red Book, that's the information for voters, a yes vote would regulate dental insurance rates, including by requiring companies to spend at least 83% of premiums on member dental expenses and quality improvements instead of administrative expenses, and by making other changes to dental insurance regulations. A no vote, according to the Secretary of State, would make no change in law relative to the regulations that apply to dental insurance companies. And I should add that a lot of this discussion focuses on a term, medical loss ratio, just a technical term for the percent of money an insurer spends on medical expenses, healthcare quality improvements, as opposed to administrative costs. On the S side of the issue, that's the ad regulations limit administrative cost side. I'm joined by orthodontist Mouhab Rizkallah, who's with the Committee on Dental Insurance Quality. On the no side, that's the keep it how it is side, joined by former State Senator James Welch, who served on a special commission in 2014 that rejected a similar proposal, and he's now with the Committee to Protect Public Access to Quality Dental Care. Dr. Jim, good to see you both. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Doctor, I gave a short explanation from the Secretary of State. Anything you want to add? And after you do that, why is the yes vote the right vote?
Well, simply put, at some point you're going to have to trust your doctors. And I would just point out that at this point, this is not just a state matter, it's actually a national matter. The American Dental Association, the American Academy of Pediatric Dentists, the American Association of Oral Surgeons, the American Association of Endodontists, the Academy of General Dentistry on a national level, and on the, have endorsed this ballot question. And on the state level, the Massachusetts Dental Society, the Massachusetts Dental Hygienists Association, the Massachusetts Nurses Association, the Massachusetts Association
of Orthodontists,
Pediatrics,
beyond the endorsers,
surgeons,
why on the merits should people vote yes?
This is a very good question. Ultimately, what this comes down to is why is medical insurance regulated and dental insurance is not? And the answer is really demonstrated as a case in point. Delta Dental of Massachusetts in 2019 gave away $291 million to their parent company while only spending $177 million on patient care. They are a not-for-profit company, and at some point, someone was sitting around in a boardroom and they realized that they had a surplus of premium revenue. And that surplus of $291 million, they had a choice. It's a choice that we want to give to patients now.
Got it. And you would say that 83% of that money has to go to patient care.
Actually, all of that money should have gone to patient care.
What's wrong with this yes side? Why should people vote no, Jim?
When evaluating any healthcare policy or recommendation, you always want to think of three things, three main pillars. What's the effect it's going to have on costs to consumers? What's the effect it's going to have on access for consumers? And what's going to have on the access or effect on the actual access, quality of care for consumers? And all three of those questions, this ballot question fails.
But isn't my understanding is the Affordable Care Act has mandated that in medical insurance, a certain percentage in the 80s has to go to patient care. If it works for medical care, why shouldn't a comparable thing work for patient care?
Well, as much as traditional health care, traditional medical care, and dental insurance or dental care have a lot in common, there are a few things, and a couple things especially, that they don't.
Like what?
One is that it's mandated to have medical insurance here in Massachusetts, and also when you're talking about trying to cut costs, dental insurance is about 5% of the same type of premiums that take into dental insurers rather than medical insurers. Much smaller pool to try and...
By the way, doctor, just to be clear, other than this Delta Dental thing, I understand this is public reporting, you have no idea what the current loss ratio is. It could be 82%. It could be actually 83%. Do you know that it's not?
We definitely
How do you know that it's not?
We've gotten that directly from journalists who have asked Delta Dental, and I have that in writing.
Well, I
can provide that.
I don't have time to see
well,
this.
so John Chesto. So I have two pieces. Two documents in here. When we came out and exposed this problem, Delta Dental tried to send a message to all doctors, all the dentists in the state, saying, we're not at a 60% medical loss ratio, which is what we claim that they are at. They said, and I have this in writing in my binder, they said we're at an 85% loss ratio. And so my group, the Committee on Dental Insurance Quality, which is composed of 5 patients and 5 dentists, which is the balance of the doctor-patient relationship, we put together a retort to their point, and we published it. We gave it to all the doctors, and guess what? Turns out they've changed their minds. They're no longer at 85%. They told John Chesto about a week and a half ago that they think they're now at 74%. That is not true either.
Why don't you disclose? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim. Have the insurance companies released what the loss ratio is?
Well, I think the study, the Milliman study, and I'm sure you've read, and Doctor, you've read as well, very conservative study, talks about even if dental insurance companies had to cut costs or were able to cut costs, and their conservative estimate, even if they were able to break even and cut costs by 10%, your average premium for your average person would still probably go up close to 30 to 40%.
That study, from what I understand, from Tufts was paid for by the National Association of Dental Plans. So why should that have credibility with the public when it's paid for by the side that's opposing the question?
Well, the Tufts study, and as it actually says, and to quote their own study, actually says that the ballot question, and forgive me, Doctor, but is built on very thin information.
If I just may for a second, the thing I still don't understand is, wouldn't the public be far better served, whether the no vote or the yes vote is the right vote, to say, here is the current loss ratio in the industry, so people know when they hear you say it's going to cause diminution in patient care or a raising of premiums, they know how much it's got to be adjusted if his proposal were to become law.
Well, if you look at the ballot question, and unfortunately voters aren't tasked with the job of being able to pick out certain parts of the ballot question. They can only vote yes or no on the ballot question. This ballot question is flawed, and when it comes to potential cost for consumers, potential access for consumers is going to go down, and the quality of care, there's absolutely no guarantee.
When you're shaking your head, just to be clear here, this is the first in the nation from what it is. So how can you be so sure that he's wrong and you're right? How do you know that it won't lead to diminution in care or raising of premiums?
There are so many answers I can give you to that
Well, how about
question.
a short one?
The short one is $291 million is just a case example. $291 million would go back to patients. It would go back to them as premium reductions, as premium rebates, or as copay reductions.
Do you quarrel with these numbers? These are public numbers. They were in a 990 or some kind of filing.
Exactly.
Do you disagree with these numbers?
Well, the Boston Globe, I think, wrote a story just last week, and they had more accurate, I would say, maybe different numbers.
These are the exact numbers in the 990.
Please let him finish if I can. Yeah, I'm sorry,
Thank
Jim.
you, I appreciate it. But the reality is, I think the doctor tries to make this the ballot question about one company. The reality is this is going to affect all consumers. This is going to potentially affect all companies that provide dental insurance. You can't make it just about one company.
Last night we had the question one people here, and because they want to change a provision in the Constitution around the income tax, they have to amend the Constitution. Yours is a law change. You could have gone to the legislature and said, this is what I think is best for the people of Massachusetts. Did you do that?
We did.
And what happened?
But I really need to respond.
Well, you can in a second. Can you answer my question?
Yes, I have in my binder here.
You don't need to show me your binder.
In 2015 and 2019, we attempted to go to the Massachusetts Dental Society, tried to get this passed in 2015 and 2019.
With a cap on administrative costs?
Yes. We did it in 2015 and 2019. It never even made it out of committee because of the power of the dental insurance lobby. They are using member funds, the patient funds, to stop the thing from even being voted on.
What should they do if they think it's a bad idea?
What should who do?
What should the dental insurers, if they believe, as Jim would suggest, that it's a bad idea?
There's a great answer to that.
What is it?
What they should do is create controversy and smoke and mirrors and confuse everybody, which is what they're doing. And what Jim just described was a Milliman study, which you pointed out was actually produced by the NADP, and they literally called it, in the voter information guide, which in this case is a disinformation guide, they called it specifically, if you're to open it, and I hope every voter opens it, it says on its first line that that premiums will increase according to a recent independent study. But this study was not independent.
Okay, we got that point. Jim,
binder.
if I can go back to you for a second, I understand ballot questions can't be separated, but just so that people understand where you're coming from, and I know you're urging a no, there's a portion of this that doesn't mandate the 83% go to patient care. It's a transparency thing. This is in a state which has the worst transparency when it comes to government. As you know, you served in that government. It's not your doing, but in terms of the judiciary, the executive branch, the legislature, would you oppose the transparency provision if that were a standalone by the doctor?
Well, it's not a standalone.
But what if it were? Just so I understand where you guys are coming from. Would you oppose transparency where these loss ratios were reported to the public?
Transparency is never a bad thing, obviously, but the reality is this question doesn't afford the opportunity for the
It does
voter
not.
to
That is
decide.
correct.
Does not afford the opportunity to decide, or a cafeteria-style plan when they go into the voting booth. This is either a question for yes or a question for no.
You know, as Jim has said, this is not just about Delta Dental. I know you have an issue
Delta
with
Dental
Delta
is the
Dental.
largest
I
company
understand
in-
that,
in
but
the
there
state.
are other insurers as well. Getting back to the question I asked you before, how do you know that there won't be, I mean, I assume when people vote, the single most important question to them is going to be, as a patient, which is what virtually every voter is this going to be good for my care? Is this going to be good for my premium? You really don't know.
We do, actually,
How is that?
Jim. So I've been involved in multiple litigations against that expose the numbers from Delta Dental. Delta Dental, specifically, we had a Supreme Judicial Court litigation twice with Delta Dental in the last year regarding this ballot question.
If you could just answer my question,
And
how do you know?
they provided data showing that their actual cost as a not-for-profit company is 5.15%, which basically means they're at a 94-ish percent. They could spend 94% on patient care. We're giving them 83%.
I mean, according to you, 5% is administrative and related
Exactly.
costs. Do you disagree with that?
Well, I would add in just to the point about transparency
Sure.
in the last question, of course, actually in 2011, there were policies that were added in the Division of Insurance, and they were actually repealed within 1 year.
No.
As you know, covering Massachusetts politics for many years, you know that things don't get repealed that quickly unless they were completely to the point where they were no
that's just
benefit at
false.
all
Well,
to the
can
consumer.
you respond to the numbers the doctor is throwing out, this 5% number, and suggesting that 95% would be available in Delta Dental for patient care? Yes, is that accurate as far as you're concerned?
I think it actually highlights the most important point about this is that this question has not been vetted. There's no way to know the numbers that the doctor is talking about. There's no study that shows it.
Those are the numbers provided
Let
by
him
Delta Dental.
finish.
Piece
yeah.
of paper that you printed out on your own computer, but the reality is this hasn't been vetted out.
This is their complaint.
And-
This is Delta Dental's
Okay,
complaint.
we don't have time to read the complaint here. You have 30
It's
seconds.
yes.
If you want to give a final shot, literally 30 seconds. Give me your final pitch.
At the end of the day, this comes down to math. You don't have to trust the dental insurance companies. You don't have to trust all of the dental organizations. All you have to trust is the math. The math is simple. When they have a surplus, they have an opportunity to make a decision. Do they make the decision that they're
15
going to give it to
seconds.
patients, or do they make the decision that they are going to give it to themselves? And in this case, they gave it to themselves. Delta Dental
Gotta hold
took
it.
$291 million
You have
and gave
30.
it away.
Consumers need to ask themselves one question, or three questions, I should say. Is this going to have an impact on me from a cost standpoint? Is it going to have an impact on me from an access standpoint? And is it going to increase the quality of care? On all three of those questions, this fails.
Jim, good to see you. Thanks for your perspective. Doctor, good
Thank
to see
you
you as
very
well.
much for your time.
Thank you very much.